Okay, I wanted to take a quick second and talk a little bit about how we're sharing or how we're setting up our look devs here as we're developing. So we kind of we're figuring out our process here with you guys, and we appreciate you and you know how many changes and pivots and redirects we've made. So one of the things we're finding is we bring stuff across. You know, we're spending some time doing some work trying to rework our stuff into proper scale. One of the biggest things is Arnold as a renderer doesn't look at the settings inside of Houdini, right? So if we came to edit preferences, and we can go to hit file options, and here we can set what a unit of length represents. In this case, the default is meters, right? So if we want to change this, we change it to centimeters or what have you. Simulation systems, right? Whether that's effects, whether that's cloth, whether that's dynamics for hair, and also procedural systems work best inside of Houdini when its unit is set to meters. Things like proceduralism that's used inside of hair grooming can work either way, but I do notice that some of the tools don't behave as reliably when this unit of length is set to centimeters. So a couple things. One, when our character comes in, right? So if we come in and look at this, we're going to look at here. If I set my view to be the front viewport, we zoom in here, we can see he's almost 170 centimeters tall, or meters actually, because our unit of length is set to meters. But coming out of Maya, it doesn't matter what you set Maya's preference to, or unit of measure. When you write that out, it defaults it to centimeters. So it comes in Houdini as centimeters, even though we're in meters. So this guy technically in Houdini is almost 180 meters tall. That's fine for rendering, because the reality is Arnold doesn't care what we set our unit of measurement to. It's going to assume one unit is 1 centimeter. That said, we've kind of gone all around on this on scale. We are in an R&D phase still, so a lot of this stuff we expect kind of to be changing. We want to go ahead and just leave this as it is. So when it comes into the stage, right, we expect, I'm gonna go ahead and zoom out here. We expect this to come in at the almost 180 units tall, and Arnold is going to treat that as centimeters, and we see that the subsurface shader is treating the subsurface properly, kind of right out of the bat. We don't have to go in and hack stuff. If I were to scale this down, let's just transform this down before the shader is attached, and we're going to transform this down as if we were doing this kind of our normal Houdini way. And so we're going to stop this, go to Storm to break that. It's kind of strange. Well, here's an easier way. So we will do, we're going to just change what I'm pulling in. Change in this Groom skin. And we'll see that that kind of disappeared. I'm going to ignore that. And here we go. So now you see that if we were to go to our front view to front, and we were to zoom in, we were to figure out what our, whoa, that's doing some crazy stuff. There we go. We'll see that each one of these, more defined, gray line boxes is 1 unit. So that's 1 meter, and he is like basically 1.8 meters tall. I don't know why this is showing us measurements on the grid inside of Solaris. So another thing for me to share with the Houdini guys. So this would be, true to scale, based on the unit of measurement that Houdini is defining. The problem with this is that when we render this now inside of Arnold, so let's just go back to the perspective view. right? We're going to come like this, and we're going to change this to Arnold. He's Jellyman. And that's because Arnold is assuming that that one unit of measurement is a centimeter. And so our subsurface is all kind of this crazy, crazy jelly subsurface. So the problem is that we're having to kind of re-figure out subsurface and re-figure out displacement as we come into LOPs, because really our stuff needs to come in at that larger scale. All right, so what does that mean? What that means is we need to kind of unify our process in how we're going to do our grooms and how we're going to look dev our stuff. And what we want to do is we want to move our look dev process into LOPs, right? So, or Solaris, this being under the stage context. We have a custom desktop for our team here, but you can just use this Solaris desktop. And let me talk you through what I've done here to set up to do a really bad groom and a really bad shading job for this video. I have dropped down an object network. Okay, so type tab, type object, you'll see object network. What this gives me is the ability to come into here, and I have my normal object Houdini style setup, and I don't have to go jumping around, right? So it all travels together nicely. So now I have, here's my guy, right? He's inside of SOPs, and so I brought him in. So we're going to come in here, and I just have my limbic bringing Ruben in this case in from Maya, right? We see he's really tall, and then I'm doing two things. I'm setting out this null right here, which is where I'm pulling the model into LOPs from. And then to do my groom, I'm doing a transform, right? The way we talked about before, and putting him into proper meters, right? So you see he disappears, and then I'm going to space bar F to frame him up, and we can see that he's about 2 meters tall, just shy of 2 meters. I'm then unpacking him, and this is where I'm doing all of my kind of I'm getting just down to the skin. I'm converting that. Let me turn off points. I'm converting that from a poly soup to polygons. I'm creating my scalp group. I'm just really quickly there, and then I'm generating my VDB and all the things that you guys are normally doing. This is it's fine. You keep doing that the way you've done it. And this is a way that your grooms, you won't lose any work, right? To merge these kind of two ideas together, right? Because here we have this out that is at our, treating a meter as a centimeter. And then here's our proper scaled. And this is my out, I should call this out skin, right? And then out VDB, but you get the idea. So now I come out here, and for my head guides, the way I've done it, instead of connecting this, I've actually just specified the SOP path of where I want these to be brought in from. So in this case, I'm saying the out groom, that gives me the skin I want. I set the group. And then I'm setting my VDB source to be SOP geometry and setting it to that out groom. And then I can set my density and do everything that we would normally do. Same for the hair. Instead of connecting it, I'm manually setting that to tell it what to pull from. In this case, head guides, telling it what group to pull from because it's grabbing the skin from there as well. So we're doing the scalp. And same thing for the VDB. I'm setting that to pull the VDB out of the man render. Okay. Once we've done that, we can come back up to stage, and I'm going to tell this to be pulling in from that out, right? So here, this gives me my skin at a more proper subsurface, right? Now Arnold is going to behave properly. But the problem is when we bring in our hair, right, we just use a SOP import on both of these. So this is a SOP import pointed into that object network, which is right there. And this is the man render and that out. And then for the SOP network, or the SOP import for the hair, I'm just going to the object net and pulling in head hair. And this all pulls it in as you would expect. Now, when we look at this, our head hair is down here because that's the scale that it was done at. So the simplest thing to do is to just put a transform on, and that transform, we're going to scale it up 100 times. So now when we undo that, it scales up properly. And it goes ahead and it scales our width attributes, everything that the shader needs gets transformed into the right space. So now this is all working. So, not only did it scale up the curves, it scaled up the width attribute. So we're happy with this. This does what we expected to do. Now, in looking at this, I'm going to go ahead and disable this node here. So this is coming in just raw as it would be. You can get it nice and tight here and look at the roots. And what we'll start to notice is sometimes we'll start to see faceting. In this case, we're not. Let me stop this render and restart it. Storm. And go to Arnold. You can do the restart render, but I've been told that this is the best way to do that. Coming back here, ignore a node. I'll talk more about this in a second. So this is how the hair is going to come in out of Houdini without anything extra. We scaled it up, and we see this faceting that we don't see inside of I believe even Arnold inside of the SOP context. This is really a LOP USD issue, but we can see this faceting that's happening. There's several ways to address this. So one way is to put an edit properties node down, which is what this is doing, and we go and we find this basis, type, and wrap attributes by hitting edit properties. It brings up this window, and then we search for basis, and it'll bring that up, and we just click that and we move that token over, and it'll add it to over here. And so we would go through and say basis, type, wrap, and bring those all over. And what this does is it causes it to treat that curve as a subdivision curve, and does some good stuff to it. It also breaks it. It pulls the tip in, pulls the bottom in a way that Houdini, when we're doing this on the Houdini side, doesn't do. It's all Houdini. On the more of the object SOP workflow, doesn't do this. And this really has to do with because there's not enough points when it needs a second anchor point or a third anchor point down here at the roots, and same with at the tip. We'll get into that at another time. I'm working on a solution for that we could just drop down a node that would solve that for us. For the time being, there is a way to solve this, two different ways that we can approach this. Okay. So the first way that we can do is we can come in here and on the head guides, on our guides, we can come down here and we see that the number of segments is 8. That's the default. And I've already kind of tested this number out, and we could take this up to 32, in which case on this, I need to come in here, and on my guide, I need to go ahead and recache my strokes. But now if we come back out to the stage, we'll see that we're getting a smooth look that we weren't getting before. Now you can see it's still not connecting perfectly to, let me ignore that. So here we see it's smooth, it's connecting. If we get really nitpicky, we can find that there's still some faceting in here if we went and looked. But this removes the need for this extra post-process subdivision. Now here's the problem with doing head guides where we're just cranking the segments. Makes the guides a lot heavier. They're heavier to work with and sim with. And also, so in simulating, it takes a lot more iterations to keep the hair system from collapsing on itself. So I usually like to keep this segment as low as I can to get the detail needed out of the Groom in order to then run the hair simulation. Right, so I'm going to recache this again. The other way to do this is instead of doing it on the guides, which affects the head hair, right? The hair generation takes its number of segments based off of the guides, is we can actually on the hair itself come in and resample, right? So essentially, I'm going to go ahead and hit F and look at the number of points here. We can see our point distribution, and then if I look at here at the resample and I disable that, we now see that we have tons and tons and tons of verbs on here to help with that problem, right? Same thing. I usually will add the detail here on the hair. If we're simulating the hairs themselves, which sometimes you will do depending on the hairstyle, then it doesn't really matter. but I typically try to keep a lower res guide curve and then a higher res hair. And now if we go back to the stage and go to our camera, we'll see that this is doing the same thing that changing the number of segments on the guide was doing. So we're getting, it properly, smoothed out. This is not using this subdivision. If we turn this back in, like we reconnect this and turn it on, we'll see that we're still getting a little bit of a pull away from our, sorry. Come on. This is why you don't tumble in progressive. You see that the hair is still detaching. So I'm working on a technical solve for this. It'll be probably what will happen is we're just going to generate some extra points at each root tip. So that way the hair anchors properly. This will be necessary for things like eyelashes, especially. But without this, we are getting proper root, and then we're getting enough that we're not seeing, faceting inside the hair, and that's what's necessary. So, and then what we're doing is we're just adding our material shaders, right? This is very similar to what we're doing. We have an Uber shader that we're going to be sending to you guys that you can use that would be helpful to us. And then any needs, we've been looking at what you're doing. Any needs and feedback on this would be useful to helping us all to kind of stay together. But with Lookdeving this, we're just telling it what shader we want to use, and then we're grabbing a piece of geometry out of here and slapping it on, and then the shader sticks. Working like this will make it so your stuff will come into the system and just drop in a lot easier. And here we've got our same thing, same idea. There's a shader in here for this is just using an Arnold material builder and doing an Arnold hair shader. So this is the way that I think we need to move towards, and I can send this file out as well for your reference. There's nothing very special in it, but we're working inside of the stage. We are adding an object network. We have our character is, we are not setting, I'll tell you this, we are not setting this preference to be centimeters. We're leaving it at meters. This allows us to then, when we need to move into doing things like dynamics, it's already in the proper space. Arnold doesn't care what that's set to, so we're just going to allow at rendering, we're just going to render these really big, and Arnold is assuming 1 centimeter. So this is the way that we need to start working moving forward, and we'll send this all out to you guys. If you guys have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Happy to get on the horn, get on a call, and talk through some of this. So, again, this is a very simplistic setup, but the idea of how we can keep this all contained, it's nice and packageable, and how we can work in a way that will save all of us a little bit of back and forth. So this gives us, so we're working on our grooms in meters, but yet rendering us treating a unit as a centimeter. So, and it works quite well. All right, if you need ask any questions, please don't hesitate.